Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us again for another session of Visionaries. We're delighted to have the opportunity to speak today with Major General Crider. Kim, thank you for joining us. Can I call you Kim?
Please, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us here today, making the trip down. Very much excited to have you here, and I appreciate the time and effort you're making to spend with us today. First, you have had an illustrious career. You've had literally the pinnacle of your profession, becoming a two-star general within the Space Force. You originally started as in the Air Force, devoted your career there, Chief Data Officer, and then Chief Technology Innovation Officer with the Space Force. Usually people who reach the pinnacle of their profession could have spent their time actually anywhere. It means they're dedicated, mission-oriented, lots of good characteristics. What made you choose the military? Why start there? Why devote your time and effort there?
Well, let me first start out by saying that, let me say thank you very much for having me. This is really a great honor to be here with you today. Nothing that I have done in my career was scripted. So,
including this conversation.
To include the decision to join the Air Force.
Oh, it's so interesting.
It wasn't necessarily a foregone conclusion early in my early days that I would go into the military. I had no military, family lineage, no military ties, significant military ties growing up. So it just became an opportunity that presented itself when I was in high school, really, and I was pretty strong in STEM at the time, and I grew up in South Florida, and as much as I love South Florida, the adventurer in me really wanted to venture out of Florida. Florida is a very long state, and I just felt like, there's got to be something beyond that, beyond that straight line. And every other one of my siblings went to school in Florida, and I really wanted to do something different. So having been strong in STEM, I applied for engineering scholarships around. And at the time, Air Force was actively recruiting for engineering. And I found myself with an engineering scholarship, ROTC scholarship. And so it was like a dream come true in that regard. Once I graduated, I did my undergrad at Duke, and once I came out and went into the Air Force as an engineer and in Air Force acquisition, working some very large-scale systems at the time, and I had a lot of leadership responsibilities presented to me, which happens, to young people that come into the military. The military is a great career and a great place to start out. Even if you don't stay for a whole career, it's a great place to start out for young kids coming out, because you can apply your talents, you can apply your education, and you can learn about leadership, and you can take on leadership responsibilities at a very young age. So I had some opportunities to lead some pretty substantial programs as a young officer. I was at Hanscom, right up the street. It was my very first assignment. Coincidentally, I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but coincidentally, my very first job, my very first assignment at Hanscom was a space mission system.
Really?
Space command and control.
I didn't know.
We did that mission at Hanscom back then. Now all that's moved out to LA, and Colorado. But that was just almost like a full circle, bookmark experience, because I started out in space. I had no idea, the trajectory of my career. Space Force certainly didn't exist. But I had no idea that the trajectory of my career would take me back to space, and then I would retire, with the Space Force. But anyway, great opportunities. I thought I was only going to stay for 4 years, like many people do. And I stayed for 8, and then I just kept going and just had a phenomenal series of opportunities present themselves to me along the way.
I will say you frame it as if you have the opportunities presented to you, but I'm sure merit and enthusiasm and interest also played a role, right?
Sure. I mean, like all of us. I mean, we, so long as, and I tell this to young people all the time, including my own, young adult children. you got to do the best with what you have.
Yeah.
And if you make the best of every situation that you're in, and you grow, and you learn, and you put yourself out there.
Yeah.
You put as much out there as you're taking in. You're going to be successful. Successful will find its way to you.
Yeah.
And I think that in my case, I was fortunate in that certainly there's a certain amount of luck. Right place, right time. But everywhere I went, I was very eager to engage, participate, learn. I mean, I changed, literally kind of changed my area of focus probably 10 or 15 times in the course of my career. I mean, I never really was doing one thing. I was doing technology, but it was applied to a variety of different mission areas, a variety of different problem sets. I was always looking for, well, what's the problem here that needs to be solved? And how can I, given my experience, my background, my knowledge, what I know, how can I help address this? And what don't I know? What do I need to go find out? Who do I need to get to know?
Right.
Just how do I help solve some problems here, but with the help of a network that I can grow. So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Is really putting yourself out there.
Yeah. Well, and I can imagine also, you may have changed roles, but you were within the context of the Air Force, which is big. So
Very
thousands of people, tens of thousands of people. Okay, but that also means as every year you could do something new. But also, I imagine like you're growing your own personal knowledge base and expertise within that environment. So your decisions and opportunities are bigger because it's like, oh yeah, you're bringing what you've learned with you, not even though it's new roles for you.
That's right. And what most people don't often think about is that when we think about the military and we think about a service like the Air Force, it is very big. I mean, 330,000 people.
I was only off by 2 orders of magnitude. So.
Yeah. Space Force much smaller, but still highly impactful, and still a lot of people. But when you think about the entire, I'll use this overused word, but the entire ecosystem of the Air Force, it's much more than 330,000 people.
Yeah.
It's all the DoD contractors that are directly supporting the service as sort of in place government support contractors, and all these external contractors like VIA, bring a lot of capability to bear. So to really make an impact and to really address its mission within the Air Force, all its mission areas, you have to take into account all of the military, all of the government civilians, all the government support, all the external contractors, all the allies and partners that have something valuable to bring, all the agencies that you can partner with. And that was something that I learned early on, and I continue to grow that broad network of connectivity, which I have found to be extremely valuable even in what I do today. Another thing that I want to make sure everybody's clear on, because it almost gets buried sometimes in my bio, but I spent 35 years in uniform. 27 of those years I spent as a reservist. Which means I spent 8 years on active duty full-time Air Force. Then at the 8-year point, for a variety of reasons, most of them personal, I decided to leave active duty Air Force and go into the reserves. But the day I left, I resigned my commission as a regular Air Force officer. The very next day, I raised my right hand and I re-upped, and I was awarded a commission as a reserve officer. Again, not scripted, other than that one day I said I was going to do this, next day I was going to do that. But for the next 27 years, I really didn't know where that reserve career would take me. Certainly, I believe that it took me in so many valuable places that and opened so many doors that I don't think I ever would have had I stayed in the active duty track. Just brought me into operations, brought me into so many new mission areas. It opened me up to communications, not just acquiring systems, but actually implementing them and operating them in the operational side of the Air Force, in faraway remote destinations, deployments, exercises, as well as staff work and communications, of course, and cyber operations that ultimately evolved into. is critical to everybody
Yeah.
and every mission, to include space. And then that kind of drove me towards space. But as a reservist too, I was in and out of uniform over the course of the next 20 years or so,
Right.
before I kind of came back on more full time at the end. But I mean, I spent several years during that 20-year period where I would only do my minimum reserve duty and I would be working day to day.
Yeah.
I spent 15 years as a systems engineer and working at MITRE.
Right.
Right. And then I spent another 7 years working in private industry as a consultant, and spent a lot of time down here in Cambridge, at Harvard, consulting with the CIO and CIOs of many universities around the Boston area, and just working on helping them evolve their IT capabilities and their cybersecurity capabilities. So because I had that experience, again, interacting this very broad network, external to the military, really helped me bring those insights and that knowledge of what's happening in commercial industry, where's the technology going, how is it being applied, bringing that into the military, in scenarios, and how do we help solve problems in a new and different way, and vice versa. I could bring my insights from being in the military leadership. How do you solve these big, large scale enterprise problems? But much of the things that people are doing don't scale that big.
Do you think? I'm curious whether you think, for individuals thinking about the similar career path, to be major general, do you think it benefited you to be a reservist versus staying within the military, or do you think like it's an anomaly actually? It's the outlier to be made, to progress to the top without having been full time.
Well, I mean, it takes a lot of work and there's a lot of factors that come into play to become a general officer in the military, whether you're active duty or reserve. I just happen to think that, and everybody's story is a little bit different.
Right.
So there really is no set formula one way or the other. In my case, it was very beneficial for me to have this broad set of experiences, a lot of breadth and depth in my portfolio of things that I could contribute to, and have demonstrated a willingness and a capacity, a proficiency to lead other people. I mean, that's obviously a critical part of any military leader is can you actually lead other people and get things done at a very at a small scale, at a mid-sized scale, and then at a very large scale. Can you move large organizations of people towards some strategic outcome? So the ability to do that and bring all these extra tools that I had in my tool chest were very beneficial and very necessary at the time. Because there weren't a whole lot of people when I was coming up that could really speak the language of so many different mission areas, having worked in many of them in my military capacity, and could bring that external perspective from commercial industry in.
That's super helpful. And if I fast forward a little bit, I think you raise the size of the Air Force, right, and even larger with the broader community, and you raise the ability to sort of lead, as a base criterion, right, for leadership for general officer status. So in your last role, you were Chief Technology and Innovation Officer for the Space Force. Innovation is often associated with small organizations, right? Small companies. We talk about being nimble. We talk about startup. We talk about entrepreneurship. What does innovation mean, and how do you lead innovation in an organization with hundreds of thousands of people, greater ecosystem? How do you think about that? What are some of the challenges, and what makes you successful in that?
Yeah, it's a great question. But it really does start off with, first of all, being willing to take a step back and say, there's a better way to do this. Not getting so caught up in this is how we've always done it sort of mindset, but always being willing to sort of take a step back and give yourself the broader view, and open yourself up to new ideas. You've got to have that first and foremost. Then there's also the just the real fundamental courage that goes along with not only is there a better way to do this, but we're going to do this differently, right? We're actually going to take this on. We're actually going to, go after this a little bit differently. We can make this happen. As you can imagine, in any very large organization, I'm sure you guys have seen it from, the kinds of organizations that you've tried to help. There's always some amount of, organizational inertia, culture that has to be overcome to really get innovation going. And you have to have a real appreciation for that. It's there for a reason.
Lives are at stake.
Lives are at stake. Bureaucracies exist for a reason. There's a certain amount of stability that you need to make sure that things are functioning properly, and that mistakes aren't going to just happen willy-nilly. That there's a certain amount of established ways of doing things for a good reason. You're safeguarding lives. You're safeguarding, and you're stewards of taxpayer dollars. But by the same token, you want to be able to say, but we could do that, and we could do this better. So you have to be willing and able, to see that and move that forward. And if you're around long enough, you'll know how to get the machine moving in a good direction. And it's not easy, but you have to be willing to do it. I would always surround myself with innovative people. And I would bring, and some folks are the new people coming in. They've seen this for the first time, and they're going, "There's a better way to do this," or "I know about this technology, and I think we can apply it here." And I would surround myself by that, because that's how you get a lot of the ideas and certainly some amount of the energy. And you want to go outside and see the things. But then you come back in and you go, okay, now knowing what I know about how this organization works, and where the challenges are, where the inertia is, what's it going to take to really drive innovation through? Because innovation is, as you all probably know, this is your lifeblood too. There has to be a real problem that you think you can solve, and your ability to solve that problem has to have real relative advantage for the people that you're solving it for. You have to be able to, those that you are going to help solve that problem for and with, have to see a real relative advantage. Ultimately, right? That they would be willing to move away from the old ways of doing things to something new and innovative, because that can actually help me solve my problem. I'm going to run with that. But it's scary. So running with it doesn't necessarily mean throwing everything away that you've always ever known. It's number one, it's very scary, but number two, it's probably not necessary and not useful to do that. So you have to kind of find some compatible way, to get that innovation inserted. Even the most disruptive innovations that you can imagine ultimately find that they have to be compatible with the broader set of
has to exist within
norms and rules and behaviors of that culture. You have to, not that you have to conform to it, but you have to find some degree of compatibility. So that it's not tossed out and out of hand. And completely rejected. So you've got to work your way through, and that's I think how large enterprises ultimately innovate, is they find those innovations that solve real problems, and then they bring them in some compatible way and give people the opportunity to start working with the innovation, engaging with the innovation. Now the next big piece of it, which is often where a lot of innovation gets stalled or stopped, is the broad implementation. It's one thing to try the innovation out, get everybody excited about it, see the value in it, and then how do you really start to scale? And that's a whole nother, there's a whole chapter in that one too.
Right. Well, so you mentioned a couple things I think are super interesting, and when you think about that, you mentioned, for example, you have to provide value, you have to find a way to be able to demonstrate that, but also measure that with the make it compatible with the organization. So thinking about Gen AI, because we can't go 30 minutes without talking about Gen AI. Are there, this is an area that everybody's talking about. you had a role actually, which was chief data officer for the, for the U.S. Air Force. Wondering whether you think, wow, we used to always talk about the data issues and the data problems. Now everybody's talking about AI. Do you think there's still a role for the data discussion, or is that compatibility? How do you think that plays out? What are your thoughts on sort of that combination of data as input to AI,
right,
and the advantages for Gen AI there?
Yes, it's really interesting how the conversation has evolved. I was the chief data officer at the department level of the Air Force in 2017, and I was the first chief data officer in the DoD.
Yeah,
the Air Force was very visionary in its recognition that we have a lot of data here, and we want to be able to do more with it. And this was before AI really was starting. It was really a thing. I mean, it was starting to be a thing.
Yeah,
we were playing around with a few very small scale AI kind of pilots. Then things took off, and then of course in 2022 when Gen AI came out, and then it really took off.
Right.
And all the conversations started to shift to AI.
Yeah.
At first, we couldn't get anybody really to talk a lot about data, and once we started talking about data and getting folks to think about the value of data because of the things you could do with your data, generate some insights, do better, predictive analyses, and we were reinforcing the importance and the value of data because of the problems that we could help solve with analytics and early versions of AI, or some of the more well-established AI technologies at the time. And then everyone wanted to start to talk about data because they recognize, this is really interesting. This is really valuable. We got to do something with data.
Yeah.
And then when the AI conversation started to take off, people stopped talking about data.
Yeah.
Now they just want to talk about AI. And so, yes, to answer your question, there is still a critical, important role of data.
Thank you.
We have not solved the data problem in any manner. I think people have just sort of jumped past it, leapfrogged over it, and it's still a really, really important piece of the puzzle. Obviously, if you're going to do anything with AI, you've got to have good data to train your models against, and then to be able, AI acts on data.
Right.
You've got to have good data, and so it's an absolutely critical piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I would hope that actually tying the last two kind of questions together, I can imagine that you were mentioning, the innovation has to solve a problem.
Yes.
And I think what Gen AI has done is made it easier for the average person to say, oh, I could see how that might solve a problem for me, right? Easy, right? It doesn't require being a programmer necessarily to do that. So it makes it more tangible about what problem. And then that you mentioned compatibility, and data is the compatibility piece, which is it doesn't matter how good that tech is if I don't have wait, how is this going to work, and how can I get access to that, and it's on a secure network or not on a I can imagine all of those pieces you have to solve for, right? The clearances and
That's right. And we always talked about data as sort of being this iceberg, right? And there was this big, we were just sort of the data that we were working with every single day was sort of the tip of the iceberg. Like there was this big, potentially large, set of data beneath the iceberg that we could really get after. I think we're still in that. We still have that, but the problem is that the more we're talking just about AI, the more we're losing sight.
We're only talking to that little tiny. We even go further up. We're only at the very, very, very tip.
We're just at the tip of at the tip of the glacier that's sitting above the water. We're losing sight of all the depth that you need to create, and that you need to be able to harness. Right. I mean, we're getting to the point where I think there's more and more data that's being collected. Certainly, I mean, all the polls will tell you that we're entering hundreds of zettabytes of data right this year, and it's going to continue to grow into numbers that you can't even really imagine.
Right. Nobody even knows what that is, right? There's no
When you think about 200 zettabytes, what is that? I mean, I heard somebody talk about this statistic of and those of us that have been around for a while, we can start to get our head around something like this year alone, we're going to be around 120 zettabytes of data, which is like a billion terabytes.
Right.
And then next year, we're going to be at 180 zettabytes of data. So 60 zettabytes. Well, what is that? Well, somebody said that's like 60 trillion DVDs. 60 trillion DVDs.
Yeah.
Right? So those of us that have been around for a while, we know, okay, I got to go research something on these handful of DVDs.
Right.
Right? I mean, we're talking about a lot of information once
Yeah.
you start to get it into some physical context that you can get your head around.
Okay.
So there's all this information we need to be able to drill into to really get a sense of, how do we help answer the questions? How do we derive the insights? How do we solve the problems? But we need that data to be good quality data.
Yeah. Well, so a couple things for younger viewers, DVDs are these physical discs that data used to be on. We are streaming on YouTube, but I remember the days when
what's a DVD?
when the big thing was when DVDs came out, different from CDs, is that you could fit like the whole Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yeah.
Which, for those of you who are younger viewers, an encyclopedia is like Wikipedia but in print format. And the idea is that
we're only talking about 5 years ago.
No, I know.
DVDs were a thing.
It's a real thing. It's a real thing. And the ability to say, well, wait, I could have had encyclopedias used to be considered, they would encyclo like literally everything, right?
Yes.
The origin of the word is this was our tome of knowledge could fit on a DVD. And now you're saying that we're going to create 60 trillion more of those in the next 12 months.
Right.
That's it's nobody can.
That's
hard to imagine.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to switch gears a little bit and just because this is, or maybe not. You'll tell me how this goes. Which is you had this career with the Air Force and with the Space Force. You've now started your own firm, Alara Nova.
Yep.
And I'm curious. You could have done lots of things, right? What made you want to start your own firm? And tell us more about that.
Yeah, thank you. So Alara Nova, ELARANOVA. It's kind of a curious word. It's 2 words, actually. Alara refers to a navigational instrument that sailors would use to find and track the North Star.
Yep.
And Nova refers to supernova, big burst of energy and brilliance. So we're a company that really likes to help other companies in industry, or government for that matter, track its North Star, what its purpose is, where it's trying to go, what problems it's trying to solve, how it's trying to get there. And, we bring a lot of energy behind that to help them become successful. We're essentially a consulting firm. We consult and advise industry partners, government partners. We are growing an international portfolio this year. We are growing a policy portfolio this year.
Yeah.
And we all came out of our careers. Everybody that's affiliated with Alara Nova, for the most part, have spent decades either in the government, various aspects of the government, or industry, all with a focus on space.
Okay.
And now with the growing and burgeoning space economy and space needs of our nation and the world, we see a real need and an opportunity to help industry, government, and partners around the world come together on growing and elevating and amplifying the space capabilities for national security and for economic prosperity.
Yep.
There's so much that we can do from space, and it's only going to continue to grow. So we need all the capabilities that that space can provide in space, and getting those capabilities to space, and then working them from space back down to the Earth to help not only life on Earth, but in the future and even today, operations and life in space.
And so I have a layman's view of space, right? And when I think about that, I think, well, actually, we all have some interaction every day with space. Google Earth, the GPS on my phone, or navigation by car. Are there applications though that are unexpected around space? That you'd say, oh, well, here's something you may not know about space applications, space technologies that might surprise people or some of our viewers.
Well, certainly we all have become more and more, I think, attuned to the idea that space provides global satellite communication capabilities around the world. And for communities that are very much in remote, disconnected parts of the world, even within our own country.
Yeah.
Having access to communications is a really vital,
Yeah.
commodity and capability. So that's absolutely critical. You mentioned position navigation and timing.
Yeah.
So timing itself, position navigation, a lot of people think about because they're people very familiar with navigational services provided by GPS.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think about timing, and the whole clock system and the ability to sort of keep accurate time uh, down to very minute time intervals. I mean, that runs everything. Our transportation system, our financial systems, they're all based on some established time sequence, and that timing capability is provided by GPS.
So first I had no idea. So things like now that you say that, it's like, oh, air traffic control.
Yes.
I have to know not just where all those planes are,
Right.
but when they are, and I can't be off. A minute or here is not going to be helpful to
That's
me,
right.
actually, because it's
That's
a
right.
disaster. And financial I need to know who cleared first,
That's right.
who bought, who sold, with order.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So timing is a really critical piece. More and more people are becoming more familiar with the importance of having access to imagery from space as well.
Yeah.
For any number of industries to use, and that's becoming much more of a commoditized capability, which is going to increase value to a lot of people who are trying to solve for problems here on Earth. They can get kind of a space eye view of what's happening on Earth. They can figure things out that they couldn't before.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can imagine also that. I mean, one thing we've seen is we do work in the energy industry is that if you're looking at transmission lines, all kinds of equipment, especially in a country like the size of the United States, like drones aren't helpful here, right? There's not enough range, not enough, and so the ability to look from afar has lots of benefits for monitoring, especially as we move to carbon reduction and energy efficiency. How do I know things are happening in the right way? So lots of verification options there too, I bet. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's growth in things that a lot of people aren't thinking about too, that we'll be sort of in this advancement of doing more things in space for Earth.
Oh.
So there's mining in space. There are very precious minerals and noble gases that we can collect in space and bring them down to Earth. That's an interesting thought. There's a really interesting program that when it first came out, a lot of people thought that it was crazy, but it's actually gaining a lot of traction and growing in terms of its viability, which is a program called Rocket Cargo.
Oh, really?
And it's a program to actually launch cargo from one place on Earth to another place on Earth.
Because the most direct route, it's actually a straight line because of the curve.
That's right.
So funny.
On a rocket vehicle.
Yeah.
And it can be very precise.
Yeah.
You go up and you go down.
Yeah.
And so that's a really interesting concept that a lot of people probably don't think a lot about.
It's funny to hear that. Of course, it's amazing what becomes commonplace over time. I mean, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, if you had said, you know what, I'm going to call a random stranger and I'm going to get in the back of their car.
Yes.
I'm going to let my kids get in the back of some random and then they're going to stay at somebody's house who I've never met before. And I'll just do that on an app and they're unlicensed and they're not, that would have been, and then I'm going to take photos of me and I'm going to put them online and let anybody who's anybody look at those photos. I mean, that's all sounds crazy.
It's crazy, but it's amazing how things shift. That's why technology and innovation is so exciting to me personally, because some things take hold very quickly.
Right.
Some things take a little bit more time, but ultimately, there's a progression of, we're just becoming much more effective human beings.
Yeah.
And I think everything that we're moving towards is moving us to a better state.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always challenges. There's certainly threats. There's certainly risks in all of these areas, and these innovations that have become more commonplace have risks that go along with them. We've seen that play out. But in the end, I think we're becoming much better as a result.
Yeah. Well, this is a good note to kind of, maybe a final question here, which is, we're in December. often look towards 2024. We talked about AI, we talked about data, we talked about space. Any kind of predictions or things you're looking forward to in 2024 from a technology or innovation perspective?
Well, I think 2024 and beyond, we're just going to continue to accelerate. I think that the floodwaters are wide open, and we have a lot of energy behind us to keep this going. It's good to know that more people are aware of the challenges that AI can present, and the need for responsible applications of AI and all that goes along with that. I think the recent executive order that came out was very good.
Yeah,
it's very comprehensive. It's not dogmatic, but it certainly sets a set of principles that we really have to focus on.
Yeah.
So that as we're more rapidly looking to embrace AI, and I think we will, I think this time next year, there'll be so many more applications of AI and Gen AI in particular. And also, there will be much more implementation of governance models and verification systems and support so that we can verify the models as we're getting ready to deploy them and implement them, which is so important. And the data, right? And getting really, I think the conversation about data is going to resurge, right, as this continues to evolve. But I think we're really at the tip of the iceberg. There's so much excitement around Gen AI right now. It's just sort of this novel thing.
Right.
But I think we're at the tip of the iceberg of really being able to leverage it to great use for many things that is going to make our society so much better. Again, notwithstanding the threats and the challenges, and in fact, AI is going to help us deal with many of the threats and challenges that we face even from AI. I think that this back and forth situation will ultimately, good will prevail.
Right.
But I just think we're at the tip, because I don't think everybody realizes, and even I don't. I think about this a lot, but it gets me so encouraged to think about how much insight, how much understanding we can have from really investigating the data that we have, or the data that we're in the process of obtaining, and using AI and Gen AI in particular to look for those patterns within the data, right? To find the nuances and the understanding that we don't have by ourselves, and to interact with it. Not to supplant our own human intelligence, but to augment it and amplify it in ways that we're just starting to get a sense of. I have a sense of how this is going to work, or what needs to be done because of my own experience. Now with AI and Gen AI and large language models, I can learn from what the machine is learning, and I can interact and learn even more. And it's just going to help us all. It amplifies everything.
You raise it's something I also never thought about, but when I think today I would there's no place I would go where I wouldn't take my phone and have my map, right? And it would help me navigate traffic or navigate the walk or whatever it is. And in the old days, right, that wasn't a thing, right? You basically you had to know in advance, sort it out, maybe use paper, actually know how to fold a map, or ask someone for directions, and how much wasted time. And today, no one would go anywhere without saying, well, here's my GPS. And it's almost like saying, well, Gen AI, a year or two from now, we'll look back and go, how is it I did anything without asking or without getting the best possible advice?
Well, right, and I think what I'm also saying is that there's so many things that, to your point, there's so many things that we do today that we just let GPS do for us. We just let the navigational app do for us. I don't need to worry about that. Like, I don't know anybody's phone number. I don't know my kid's phone number. I don't know anybody's phone numbers. Siri knows those things. I'm just going to say, hey Siri, call so and so.
Oh, she's calling right now.
Right. I don't need to know these things. I'm just going to let the machine do that for me.
Yeah.
But what we also are into is a state where machines know a lot and can learn a lot, and we can actually learn differently now, right? We can learn deeply and broadly with the information that we can get access to. Not that we want to stop interacting with other humans. I mean, that's an important piece of it. That interaction will create new insights and data that we put into the corpus and we continue to learn from in years to come. But this whole mode of, it's not just about letting the machine do everything. There are certain, kind of baseline things that we don't have to trouble ourselves with, so that we can free our mind up to do other things, augmented with this additional intelligence too, that just makes us grow that much more, gives us more time to grow in new ways.
Well, coming back to something you said at the beginning, all of these technologies are to help us solve problems. We have no end of problems we need to solve.
Absolutely.
So the more that we have, greater deep thinking and broad databases or to draw upon to help us solve them, the better, right? So
That's right.
There's no end of stuff we need to do better.
Yeah, and to kind of close the loop on space, there's no end of the problems that we can solve from space as well. That's how, when you think about what space is, I mean, it's just this vast environment that we don't know much about.
Right.
I mean, we know very little about it. AI is going to certainly help us learn more, because we're going to perceive more in space. We're going to gather more information, and we're going to continue to learn about things that we can do in space. We're going to continue to learn about things that we can do from space and how we can do those things better. And that's super exciting.
Looking forward to hearing more about that. Listen, well, thank you again for taking the time, Kim, to join us here. Really appreciate all your thoughts and great answers, and wish you the very, very best of the season, but to you and your family, but also for 2024.
Thank you. You as well.
Great. Thank you all for joining.